Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the next generation of enterprise and cloud connectivity solutions web videocast. We've got a great session planned for you today, and it's really going to, I think, be both informative and entertaining. I'm Bob Laliberte, a senior analyst from the Enterprise Strategy Group. And here with me in the studio we have Angela Blevins, my co-host.
Hi.
And Shaun Walsh, who is the Senior Vice President of Corporate Marketing and Development for Emulex.
Morning, Bob. Morning, Angela.
Morning. And on the phone, we've got a couple of Emulex partners. We've got Sanjay Katyal, the Vice President of Global Alliances and OEM for VMware. Welcome, Sanjay.
Good morning. Thank you. Happy to join.
Excellent. And we also have Ed Chapman, Vice President of Business Development and Alliances for Arista. Welcome, Ed.
Hey, good morning. Happy to be here.
Great, great. Hey, and for all you out there watching, make sure you check out our tweet chat during this videocast.
One of the strategy components of Emulex is this mantra that we have of connect, monitor, and manage. And this really is us trying to rethink how we see the world in a post-cloud era. If you look at the previous generation of cards that we shipped, you know, the market requirements for that ASIC was written in 2008, 2009. And, you know, we were just really beginning to understand virtualization, and the cloud was, you know, where you went to watch YouTube and videos and that sort of thing. It really wasn't the big business tool that it is today. So this is a completely new platform and architecture. And that's why we wanted our partners here to talk about how they're changing the infrastructure as we go forward. And when we talk about this thing, you know, there's a couple of things that have really changed. The expectation of response has changed. You know, we live in a world where we expect text and Facebook and Twitter and everything to be instantaneous. We also expect flexibility. We really are entering that era where infrastructure can dynamically change. You know, software defined has become a buzzword, and it's an important one, but I think the most important thing is that it means that everything in the infrastructure needs to be a platform so that it can adapt and deal with the different changes that are out there. Workloads have completely changed. If you look at the acronym soup and buzzword collection that you have in the web scale and the hyperscale data centers versus what you have in the enterprise, these people speak different languages. And we really had to work with partners to develop a new ecosystem and a new approach to it. So today, obviously, we want to talk about our next generation connectivity platform, which is our OCE 14000. But what we really want to make sure that people understand is here's how this platform and our partners are putting solutions together that adapt to these new environments and these new demands. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody again for attending, and Bob.
Sure, thanks, Shaun. So what I thought I'd do is maybe spend a couple of minutes going over what we see as some of the transformation that's taking place in IT. So obviously we collect a lot of research, we talk to a lot of users, and what we've been able to see over the last several years, going back maybe 5 or 6, is that there's obviously a massive IT transformation taking place right now. And what you're seeing is organizations trying to get off that, if you will, the legacy infrastructure and move to a much more modern IT infrastructure that's able to handle and cope with the demands that you were talking about, Shaun.
Yep.
So organizations are trying to get off of those legacy environments that are largely physical, they're inflexible, they're very static, right? A lot of times they were distributed. You have organizations that had a lot of manual processes, so it would take a lot of time to get any kind of change, move, or add done. And as a result, IT became a lot less flexible to the business, right? They weren't able to respond. So organizations are trying to move to this modern IT environment, which is far more flexible. It's highly virtualized, it's open, it's dynamic, it's highly automated. So people have a lot more efficiencies in what they're doing and how they're able to respond to the business. And they can actually say yes instead of saying no all the time. So what we've seen is that in any of these transitions, the key to making an effective transition is having the right technology that enables that transition to take place. So we've obviously been following that, and you look at a lot of the key technologies, virtualization, et cetera, things like that have come along. One of the other interesting things that we're looking at, though, as well, is how organizations are spending their money. So a couple of years ago, 5, 6 years ago, you might have had organizations coming back and saying, I have to spend about 70% of my IT budget on maintenance. I only have 30 to get that innovative technology and that enabling technology. But what's great now is what we're seeing is that's also shifting as well. So
Yes.
we do an annual IT spending survey, and what we asked is, how much is spent on maintenance, how much is spent on new technologies to
Right.
drive innovation. In our latest survey, the 2014 survey, just about
Yep.
to come out, 38% of the IT budget is now spent on new technologies to enable this transition.
Yeah.
And only 62% on maintenance. So that's great to see that shift. And over the years, we've seen that shifting. So organizations are recognizing that they need to make this transition, and they're making it a lot faster.
So Bob, one other question on that is, of that 38%, what are the major new technologies that they're spending on that is different than the legacy technologies?
Yeah, so clearly probably the number one technology that we see above and beyond, we also collect top IT priorities.
Sure.
And so server virtualization has always been number one, tied for number one for the last 4 or 5 years. And it's not just server, it's increasing their use of it.
Right.
So a lot of people have it, but what we're seeing now is organizations maturing their server virtualization environments, driving it wider into production, driving
Yep.
more VM densities and so forth. And actually, as it matures, leading to cloud as well. So organizations are doing a lot more of cloud, private cloud, public cloud, SaaS, infrastructure as a service. And we're even starting to see platform as a service picking up as well, because things like mobile
Yeah.
and BYOD are driving the need for new applications to be consumed on different devices. Right?
Absolutely.
Gone are the days of showing up and getting your corporate laptop issued to you, right? It's about what device you're bringing in. And people aren't bringing in PCs really. They're bringing in tablet computers. They're bringing in smartphones. We saw it here yesterday. People are bringing their Google Glass.
That's right.
And that's how they want to consume and be productive in their day. So the organizations need to respond to that and do things differently. The other interesting thing is that as they have these new devices, it makes it easier for them to collaborate. So that social
Sure.
aspect of work is also very important. And that's driving a tremendous amount of data,
Yeah.
which organizations are then taking advantage of and leveraging in a big data scheme. So the IT needs to be able to support that big data and provide analytics and be able to cull some data out for more efficient use or drive greater revenues.
Okay, great.
So that's what we're really seeing. And I think we talked a lot about these IT trends. I think now might be a good time to turn it over to Angela and hear a little bit maybe more about some of the compelling and maybe even humorous technology trends that we see coming out for 2014. So Angela, why don't you take it away?
Okay, so in the spirit of channeling David Letterman, here we go with the top 10 IT trends for 2014. Number 10, Walmart stores will soon be equipped with rocket launchers to shoot down the Amazon drones. Number 9, Amazon will use big data to help them avoid the Walmart rockets before they're launched, and then they'll sell you stuff you don't need. Number 8, the average college graduate has 5 connected devices, and the next one will be a body piercing. Number 7, consumers finally understand that they have willingly given more information to Facebook than NSA Prism was ever able to collect. That's a good one. Number 6, IT forecast. Increasing cloudiness with a chance of hybrids. Number 5, the shrinking attention span of human beings will drive SSDs closer to the consumer. Number 4, I like this one. Open is the new black. Open Compute, Open Flow, Open Stack, Open Daylight. Number 3, software-defined everything becomes the transformers of IT, with VMware as Optimus Prime. Number 2, millennials discover you can actually talk on a smartphone versus just text the person next to you. And the number 1 top 10 technology trend for 2014, Internet of Things is coming. Cows literally become mobile devices. Mobile.
I hope that played in the UK. I don't know.
I hope the UK liked it.
Gotta call out those mad cows, right?
That's right.
Excellent. Well, that was great, Angela. Thank you very much for providing that little humorous look at some of the technology trends for 2014. I think now we'll open it up to some of our guests as well.
Absolutely.
And we'll start with Sanjay. I mean, VMware is certainly no stranger to technology trends and arguably created them with their virtualization and cloud efforts. So Sanjay, what do you see as some of the biggest drivers to helping organizations accelerate this transition, and how important do you see connectivity in playing a role in this?
Happy to answer that. I have a question. I'm in the market for a drone, and I have to go to Walmart. So if Walmart's only fighting drones, then I think I don't have a good shot at getting one at Walmart. Walmart prices. So I think I'm out of the market for drones.
Good point.
So I think that, it's very interesting to me on really how the market's fast changing, both from an IT perspective as a consumer, as well as someone who works in the IT industry. There's a market difference from even like 10 years ago. It's all about personalized IT, and the divide between how you looked at IT from a consumer perspective versus how you did that within the enterprise. Those lines are blurring very, very quickly. And so I think at the very top, we just see, I see talking to customers, CIOs, IT professionals, business decision makers, my friends and colleagues aside, alike, that the business windows are shrinking. There's a lot of opportunity, but then the margin at which we need to operate to capitalize on those opportunities, those windows are shrinking. And what that's doing is it's creating a heightened need for agility. We have to act really fast. We have to be very flexible. Otherwise, the business opportunity either goes away or changes to something else, and you've got to regain for that. And because of that, the importance of workloads is going up. Now you rely on those workloads to capture the business opportunity, and whether it's a combination of traditional applications or SaaS applications or the new big data applications that give you a lot of insights on a lot of fast-changing data, whether it's structured, unstructured, to not just understand it, but to make decisions real time at the speed of life. All of that's really going up, and we can see that in different spaces. So the whole paradigm is really about consumption and productivity as opposed to just supplying IT. And really now the production has to follow where consumption's going. And so, the key paradigms for successful consumption are it's got to be fast and flexible, which is really agile. It's got to be very compelling. It needs to give business results fast, so it can't give you less and cost more, obviously. And it's got to be seamless. And so by seamless, I mean the user experience has to be seamless as you go from one app to the other. If you're operating in multiple clouds, how you go from one cloud to the other, public to private, private to public. That hybrid piece has to be seamless. And then within data center, how you look at compute, network, storage, how you operate the data center to really meet those workload needs and the user experience needs, that's got to be seamless. And I think all of that really, comes down to connectivity in a big way, so that you avoid the latency, the traditional latency. You're able to do more, not just what we could do in the past with all these new constraints, but actually do more with mobile and data workloads. So I think that the need for I/O, the need for greater VM densities, the need for really making sure that that application that's memory intensive, memory hungry, I/O hungry, you're able to meet that within the business SLAs and the right IT SLAs that support that. All of that needs to feed into the greater constraints that come down on connectivity.
Hey Sanjay, this is Shaun. So one of the key technologies for that is the VXLAN overlay network or virtual network function. Can you talk a little bit about how that will play a role in building this hybrid cloud for VMware?
Yeah, at VMware, we've got three core priorities, again, looking at what the customers really need from an IT perspective. Software-defined data center is one of those priorities. Hybrid cloud computing is a second priority. And then end-user computing back to mobile and unified workspace is a third priority. And then within the software-defined data center, we really believe that where the compute virtualization really provided compelling benefits to the customers the last 12, 14 years was really based on principles of abstracting all the components on the compute side into a logical layer, a common logical layer, which allows us to pool all of these assets, heterogeneous assets, into one logical framework, and then we automate that through software. And I believe that where we've provided those benefits with VMware technology on the compute side, now we've got the potential and a compelling need, frankly speaking, to do the same on network and storage. And so for network virtualization, VXLAN becomes a very important construct because we believe that to provide the same benefits and more on the network virtualization that customers have enjoyed on compute, you really need to use the same principles, the abstract, pool, and automate. And that allows us to decouple the network into a logical framework away from the hardware. You still need the hardware, but now you need even more powerful software to be that agile, and VXLAN is a key component of that.
Sounds good.
Excellent. That's great. Ed, let's turn over to you now. So we've heard a lot lately from Arista about enterprises making that migration to a cloud infrastructure and how the network needs to become more robust and agile. What kind of challenges do you see your customers having during this migration, and what are you doing to help address some of those needs?
Yeah, great question. And one of the things I heard earlier during the webcast was you mentioned a little bit about Google Glass, and someone was doing a presentation on that. And while I was driving in today, the Sacramento Kings, which is an NBA franchise in the area here, National Basketball Association franchise, is actually going to have someone, at courtside with Google Glass, actually videoing what's going on from that perspective, and then sending it out to anyone who's in the arena, maybe through an iPhone or maybe a tablet of some sort, so they can actually see that viewpoint. And the reason why I'm bringing that up, and this is one of the challenges a lot of our enterprise customers are having, is that the amount of data that is now being pushed into the data center is incredible. Or utilizing that application, their experience doesn't change as you move from one data center to another data center because the IP address doesn't change. And in order to do so, you had to provide a technology that gave you a lot more address space, because standard VLANs only went up to 4,096, and a lot of our service provider customers have requirements for a lot more customers, so VXLAN provided that functionality, as well as being able to provide that functionality to extend into an enterprise from a hybrid deployment where they can maintain that IP address of the virtual machine that they are running in their private cloud and move it into a public cloud. So being able to have an operating system that closely interacts and works with partners such as VMware and providing that sort of solution where you can natively use their NSX platform and manage the Arista networking infrastructure and use VXLAN as an overlay into that environment. And it also extends into the work that we've done with Emulex. We've had a long strategic relationship with Emulex on making sure that our products work together, starting at 10 gig, and, now we're seeing, the new solutions from Emulex where you've built in new functionality around VXLAN as well as new functionality around 40 gigabit Ethernet. We see new use cases, some of this, if the servers are moving to 10 gig, the storage solutions and the aggregation points where you have a lot of I/O going to are now going to move from 10 gig to 40 gig and potentially even higher bandwidth. So these are the sorts of things that we're focused in on in providing solutions into the marketplace and helping the enterprises move from the current data center infrastructure to a next generation data center networking infrastructure.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, no, that's great, Ed. Thank you very much. And it's really clear that having that open, having that ecosystem is really going to be important in driving these next generation solutions and affording the end users and the customers full solutions.
Absolutely.
And not just piece parts that they need to put together.
Yep.
Shaun, let's talk a little bit about some of the some of the obstacles to building out cloud. So we commonly hear in our research that security and network security is a big issue.
Sure.
We hear about performance being a problem going to the cloud. It's actually interesting.
Right.
In our data, organizations that have already gone to the cloud are twice as likely to complain about performance problems as those who are thinking about going.
Right.
Right. So it kind of sets up this, people don't know what they don't know yet.
Yeah.
Situation. Based on that, what are you doing with these? You talked earlier about how you design this next generation connectivity solutions.
Yeah.
What are you doing to help organizations overcome those performance and security concerns?
Okay. So I think when you look at it, there's two core technologies that we've implemented in this next generation platform. Number one are these virtual network functions that we've talked about in Fabrics, where you can basically create a virtual private network between your data center and your remote service provider. And this really helps both sides. For the service provider, it helps their business value and their situation because they can now have multi-tenancy in systems. They have complete isolation of what's going on. And to Ed's point, they have consistent IP addressing so that you can vMotion VMs back and forth, and you have direct access to the storage that supports that vMotion on one end. So the first issue for most IT folks is getting over that security hurdle, that they feel comfortable, they know that they're protected, they're following their policies and the regulatory issues and all those things that IT guys have to worry about in order to truly implement something. The second part is, okay, now that they're over that hurdle, what's the next challenge to delivering the service level agreements? And that's where the performance side comes in. So one of the things that we've done differently than a lot of folks in this business is we've invested in offload technology in our endpoint connectivity parts. And what that allows us to do is accelerate the performance of systems. So versus software-based implementations, we get about a 70% bump in performance improvement. More importantly, because we've added a very low latency RDMA Rocky-driven architecture that's very similar to what we've done with Arista in a number of environments where we're talking about the low latency, now you get optimum usage of that bandwidth across the wide area network or to internal networks. And that's really the change, is we didn't look at performance and say, we have to take the car from 180 miles an hour to 200 miles an hour. We wanted to improve the performance from 0 to 60, where people use it 99% of the time. And that's what scales transactions. That's what scales VDI and the other things as we go forward. And we've done this in such a way that we can partner with each of these folks in the business with their open APIs. So we really have a programmable platform in this Ethernet ASIC. And we can take technology from VMware to optimize VXLAN. We can provide software-defined capabilities for the Arista switching infrastructure and really provide that end-to-end optimization. And then when you throw in our NDIS monitoring capabilities, we can see what's happening from one end to the other. So you have visibility into not just your connectivity and security, but how that performance is being used and how you can optimize that performance. And we've done that together. We actually did a couple of really nice partnerships with some really big broadcast companies with Arista on this as well. So that end-to-end connect, monitor, manage theme is really playing out in the real world, because when you're struggling to solve problems across networks of networks, visibility and programmability and openness are the keys to that.
Excellent. Excellent. That sounds great. So a lot of great conversations today around enabling technology for cloud and connectivity solutions.
Right.
I'm sure there's a few of your customers out in the audience today thinking, don't these guys do a lot with storage too?
Yeah, occasionally.
Occasionally. So with the new technology, this next generation you're bringing out,
sure,
how's that applicable to the storage realm?
So when you look at storage, again, the change is not in the absolute bandwidth. So as an example, IOPS per second IOPS per second is one of the common measurements for storage. And we had 1 million IOPS on our last card. We got 1.5 million on this one. And I think there's even some people claiming they're getting 2 million IOPS on the card. That in of itself, while it's an interesting data point, is probably not that relevant in the world. What is relevant is how can you use those. So when you look at next generation solutions such as SMB Direct, such as NFS acceleration with Rocky, when you look at things like these next generation Google file systems and the file management in OpenStack, what they need are very, very high performance transactional systems. So again, because we've added this RDMA architecture, we've increased small packet performance by a factor of 4. So what does that mean? It means that you can, on a single port, support 3 to 4 times as many VDI logins at once. If you're Twitter, you can put more tweets per port. You know, if you're doing big data, that means that the latency time between node to node communication allows that to scale and for Amazon to sell you more stuff that you don't need. But in all of these cases, it's not just about getting faster. It's about having the way you get faster be smarter and more workload and application driven. So yes, we've improved our iSCSI and FCOE traditional stuff, but we really expanded the scope to look at how storage is changing based on the workloads that we're supporting. And I think, you know, the biggest and most obvious thing that has changed this is flash and SSD. Because by getting away from spinning disk onto very low latency, very high performance storage that is spread throughout the organization. You know, Angela made the point in her top 10 about, you know, the impatience of humans bringing SSD closer to people. Well, what that means is that at every single node in the network, you have to have a low latency answer to address the scalability, or you become the bottleneck. And if you look at what VMware has done with their software-defined data center to flatten the organization, if you look at what Arista has done with the very low latency 10 and 40 gig implementation, and you look at what we've done by creating this open programming platform on the controller endpoints, you now have the ability to adjust each segment of your networking infrastructure and virtualization infrastructure to match the application. And that's really when we talk about software-defined being everywhere. There's this incredibly symbiotic relationship between software definition and virtualization. In one way, you know, it's sort of like, you know, virtualization was only going to go so far until software-defined capabilities came along. Now that you put those two together with a flexible infrastructure underneath them that's designed to be programmed, the world of computing and IT will change in ways that we haven't even begun to imagine yet.
Yeah.
Excellent. That sounds great. Well, unfortunately, it looks like we're just about out of time right now. So what I'd like to do is invite anyone who's interested in learning more about the new Emulex solutions or solutions with Emulex partners to please go to emulex.com, their website, for more information. I'd also like to thank my co-host Angela and
Thank
Shaun,
you.
as well as my guests on the phone, Ed and Sanjay. Thank you very much. And everyone, thank you and have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.